Thank you.
Looks like we're headed for success, gentlemen.
Yes.
I see a notification saying live on YouTube, so
It's another miracle.
everybody shut their phones off.
Phones are off. This has got to be muted. Okay. Yeah, there we go.
Take it away, Leah.
Take it away. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Master Your Life, the show of insight, intelligence, and inspiration, where I ask you each episode to consider who is it you are right now and who is it you would most love to be. What kind of life are you trying to create, and how's that going for you? Could you use some tweaking? Hopefully, or inspiring guests bring you some insight and help to meet those things that you want to be creating in your life in all areas. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome to the show today with my beautiful co-host, Greg Bird, who he and I have been doing this divine intervention around wellness and financial well-being. So welcome, Greg, to the show today.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah. Happy and honored, and even more honored to have my good friend Colin Christopher here today. So a lot of anticipation, excitement we drummed up for this week leading up to this show. So Colin, welcome to Leah's stage.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, just to share for the listeners and viewers,
Yeah.
I first met Colin, gosh, it would have been about 2 years ago. So BNI International, they had a networking event. It was all about creating referrals for other business owners. And he was sitting graciously up the front left of the room. I was sitting tucked at the back of the room. And one gentleman by the name of Neville Ward asked Colin, so what are you looking for in business? And he says, well, I would really like to find a company that I could come out and help them with their sales training. I'm like, hey, that's my guy. That's exactly what I was looking for. And that's where the friendship started. So again, Colin, if you want to build upon kind of that beginnings there that you and I got working together.
Yeah, I remember it was actually, we were sitting in that little, it was a boardroom of, I think about 15 or 20 of us, and just different occupations, different businesses being represented. And Neville was the one doing the training. And yeah, we were just talking, and I was trying to figure out how to be a little more successful within that BNI structure. And like you said, Neville told me to just ask what I was looking for exactly, and then we connected. And I remember coming down to your office, I feel like it was just 2 or 3 days later. It was very quickly. And you, myself, and Jackie Fung, like the three of us seemed to really have a great connection, and we chatted up. And I remember sitting in your office and looking at some of the files, and you were going over all the different things that you and the other financial planners were doing. And I saw this opportunity for us to, really take a look at some of the things that I offer in terms of improving the psychology and the mental framework for salespeople. And I think we just we spent about an hour and a half, I think it was, just sort of bouncing ideas back and forth and coming up with an idea for what you wanted for training. And then a few months later, we did that. And here we are together now.
We did. You did an amazing job. So when I mentioned to Leah, hey, this Colin guy is really good with this hypnotism thing. And Leah, you were really excited to hear about a hypnotist because you wanted one on the show. So Leah, your comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've worked with hypnotists for on and off in hypnotherapy, sessions for clients who are trying to heal and resolve issues over the past 30 plus years. So I think that I've had less in love features around the stage sort of shows, but I definitely see the benefit of hypnotherapy in helping people to resolve issues. So maybe as we start the show, some people might be thinking the same thing as me, is that, oh yeah, we got to start with the meme. Sorry, Greg Giver. What is the meme of the day? Can't miss that.
Oh, meme of the day. So this all started when our first conversation the three of us had. So Colin was helping this fine lady with her fears and what was going on there. And he talked about this fear after a hypnotic state of a chicken. So I found this was so fitting, and Colin sent us this picture. So I can't believe how many people came out of the woodworks after this. It says, you won't know what genuine fear is until you've been chased by a rooster. So anyone who's ever grown up on the farm knows exactly what I'm talking about. So Wanda, Judy, Tanya, and another Tanya, A lot of people with fears of birds, fears of chickens. I thought that was perfect because it actually really created a lot of buzz and excitement for today. So everyone's wondering, is Colin going to hypnotize Greg? Is he going to cluck like a chicken, dance like a chicken, do the bird dance at the end? So I don't know. Colin, do you want to share a little bit more about that story and how that came about? That was actually kind of really synchronistic.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two things that come to mind with what you were talking about. Number one was the woman, and number two, remind me if I forget at the end of this story to tell you a little story about hypnotizing you for the first time. So the woman, she basically, she was taking a taxidermy class, and she had to stuff a bird or not mount a bird, I guess, as part of the class to pass. And this is something she's always wanted to do. Like, it was sort of one of her life passions, except she was deathly afraid of birds. And so she came up to, and we sat down and started, just chatting, casual conversation, trying to figure out what it is that she was afraid of birds. And we really couldn't figure it out. So what we did is I put her in a hypnotic trance and regressed her back to the very first time that she actually had an interaction that caused that fear. And it turned out, now I remember when I remember sitting there, and she goes, okay, I see them. And I go, okay, what do you see? And she goes, chickens. And I had to bite my tongue not to laugh because it's a therapy session. It's the first time I've ever encountered somebody just afraid of chickens. So she was very little, probably about the same age as that little boy in the picture, in the meme. And so we did a bunch of exercises sort of around the incident, and these chickens, she was just little and these chickens attacked her. And through those exercises, we resolved the issue so that the little girl inside of her was no longer afraid of the birds, and then brought her back forward into present time. And then afterwards, she was able to go and do her taxidermy stuff, pass the test, and she's a taxidermist now.
Wow. That's cool. And what you did for her was magnificent. And it would be transferable, would it not, across other fears or phobias or things in life that are kind of holding you back?
No, that was a very specific one for her. So like you can do, and that sort of goes into the second one that we were talking about when I hypnotized you back in the sales training there about a year and a half ago, whenever it was we did that. And you had said that you had tried to get hypnotized by many different people up until that point. And I was actually the very first person to be able to hypnotize you effectively. Now, what you experienced there was something that you could take forward. And I'm going to let you explain how you felt about it versus me trying to tell everybody how you felt about it, because I don't really know. But I set up the scenario that you could bring those tools and techniques and apply them to multiple different aspects of your life, versus the woman who just wanted to resolve the fear of birds. For her, it was a fear of birds, even though she didn't know the origin was actually chickens. But it transferred to all those different kinds of birds. And then afterwards, it was all resolved. So tell us, a little bit more about how you felt when I did hypnotize you for the first time. And actually, maybe tell us why you didn't get hypnotized by other people by comparison.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. So Leah, you and I had a great conversation this in preparation for today's show. And I think it was just a level of trust. Like there was just this thing leading up to that day where you came and there was literally 30 of us in the room. And the scenario you created, and I just want to set the context. If anyone listening has never been hypnotized before, or maybe they have, they know what I'm talking about. You talked about the 3 kind of different levels of sleep or that hypnosis, and you can dive down a little bit into that. But really what you did was you just made a safe place. And one thing that was amazing in my experience when I actually went under is the happy place that I thought of was on the beach. I could literally feel the sun like on my skin and the waves of the ocean crashing, just that beautiful moment in time that you can visualize. And then the one really neat constructive thing that you did while we were all under, and me, whatever level I was at, again, I had kind of the whispers of my grandpa bird in my ear saying, you really believe in this stuff? But here's Colin Christopher talking in my other ear, and I'm literally out cold. And you said something about the law of the gatekeeper, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind. And once I actually had an understanding of that and I could trust you, I think it was that speed of trust and that credibility I had for you, Colin, getting to know you leading up to that day that made the difference. And when you actually brought us back out, and the whole snap your fingers and we're back out, I felt like I'd slept for like 4 hours that afternoon, which was perfect because who would want a 4-hour snooze in the middle of the afternoon after a hard day's work? So, Leah, did you want to comment on that? Because when I shared that story with you, you thought it was quite amazing.
No, I think just that to the point that hypnosis can be a really nice rejuvenating thing, and it can be done in the snap of time. So it can be very healing. It's a very healing modality, and I don't know that most people think about it that way because, again, there's lots of fear around it and seeing it as a stage show sort of presentation, and that then people are afraid and they don't ever want to let anyone have that much control over them. So maybe for the audience, you could explain what is hypnotism, and just even to start there would be good.
Yeah, sure. So hypnosis is, I think one of the best definitions I've heard of is it's just an altered state of awareness where your subconscious mind is allowed to impress itself or express itself. And for the expression, you're probably thinking of the stage hypnosis shows where you get to see people, do all those weird, funny, wacky things depending on what it is.
Chicken.
Like being a chicken, yeah, absolutely. Although I've only ever done the chicken once because I find the chicken and the dog kind of cliche, although it's ironic that I hypnotize somebody over the fear of chickens. And then like on that expression side, so that's the outward part, but the impression part is much more what Greg was describing, where he was talking about going to a place on the beach and all those things. Now, Greg had a very specific image, but I didn't tell him what that image was. I just said, go to a place, and it was different for all 30 different people. Because I remember we sort of chatted, a few people gave the examples of what their experience was like when we were doing it. And everybody had a very different experience because everybody's peaceful, calm place is very different from one person to the next person. So that's when you're impressing your subconscious mind, you're doing something to alter behavior or change something. So like going back to the therapy scenario with the woman who was afraid of the chickens, all those techniques that we did to resolve the situation, that was to impress the subconscious mind with new programming so that when she was brought forward, her surroundings, she could express a different outcome.
Wow. So Colin, you'd really talked about the gatekeeper. So if you want to dive in about that, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, there was a lot that I learned that day when you shared, and I think the audience was dying to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So there's where to begin. So there's the subconscious and the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is sort of what we're all operating on right now. We're conscious, we're aware of each other, we're talking to each other. We know what's going on around us. That's the conscious mind. The subconscious mind is all the things that are going on in the background that our subconscious is interpreting and understanding and allowing us to make decisions on a habitual level. Now, where the gatekeeper comes in, basically the conscious mind, it's the gatekeeper of the subconscious mind. So anytime your conscious mind is like impaired, distracted or unconscious, hypnotized is obviously my favorite one, where the conscious mind is bypassed. Basically, when your conscious mind is bypassed, that gatekeeper function is it's rendered ineffective, I think is the best way to describe it. And when that gatekeeper is rendered ineffective, the subconscious mind can be programmed in whatever way that you want to program it.
Which can be significantly awesome, but it also can be significantly not so awesome. There's lots of things that hijack our consciousness.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different ways, and it's interesting too. Like one of my classmates, when I first took hypnotherapy training a long time ago, while her husband was watching TV, because while you're watching TV is a great way to sort of, you're in this trance-like state, your gatekeeper, your conscious mind is bypassed. And so about 5 or 10 minutes into her husband's program, she would say, "You want to take out the garbage later?" And he absolutely hated taking out garbage, but after the show, he would always go and pick up the garbage. And then about 10 think she said it was about 10 months later, all of a sudden he was taking out the garbage and he's like, wait a minute, what did you just do to me? And so there's opportunity to sort of manipulate people in one way, in a good way or a bad way, depending on what you do.
Leah, did you hear that? I just feel
I'm
like
remembering.
I want to go take out my garbage, so I'm going.
Get all my house guests ready. Hey guys, do you do windows? It's like minus 30,000 degrees here. So anyone who'd be willing to do that today. Oh, I'm just kidding. But it is important, I think, because we're, it's really important to understand the power of our mind and the power of the things that we can create that can be really awesome, and the things that we can harm people with. But what we're going to focus on today's show really is around how to be successful with programming your mind, because that's what you focus on in your practice. And we're going to just understand or agree to understand that we can get really in the weeds about what the media does with programming. And, there's hours and hours and hours of shows that we could do just on that. And we have talked about it on this Master Your Life show, probably for the last 4 years, on many episodes. So we don't beat that dog to death, because I actually like dogs, okay? This is like this moving into higher consciousness now, and also understanding that we're conscious, but there is this other higher consciousness, which is this time that we're living in right now, which is this ascension from that old way of thinking, or the old way of using the mind, really into being more awake and aware of the opportunities that we have to be, along the path of alignment more, the things that make us feel truly good, and the things that bring us satisfaction and happiness in life. And that's part of this, what I'll call self-hypnosis, and that I've taught clients to do that for many years. It's like, how do you program your brain so that you're getting what you want in your life? And that can also be done, but when you're stuck, or maybe when you don't even know that you're stuck, but that you're not actually achieving the things that you want, you might not see the things like the lady with the birds, the chicken problem. So you don't actually know what your blind spot is. You don't know what that barrier is. And you keep hitting that same all over and over again, whether that be in fears, or in picking the same person in relationships, or making the same mistakes in business, with business partnerships, that can really influence your whole life. And I think that's where the power of this unlocking the subconscious, or working with the subconscious and getting past that. The conscious, gatekeeper can really be a huge help to people. And Greg, you can maybe set the context for this, because you had a significant help that was measurable from Colin's work with you in the group.
Was it ever? And I must say the timing, Colin, was a little divine, because it was November, the fall of 2019. And I can honestly say, and when I actually look back at the results that we had and the feedback that we had, I had some comments from advisors that were 35 plus years in the business turn to me and say that was one of the best sales training type of events we've ever been to. So that's saying something. In 35 years, that all the different trainings and things and courses we've taken, that was phenomenal. Now, from a numbers perspective alone, so take a sales training, and you can take that to any different industry, because sales, I believe, is sales in an underlying context. The timing of that was all too perfect, because we all saw what happened in 2020, okay? And let's just take a continuum of people. Let's just use advisors at this particular juncture. So the ones that really, really struggled and were really trying to survive. And then on the other end of the continuum, the ones that were really thriving in 2020. I can honestly say, without a doubt, every single person, 100% of the advisors that were in that room that day, Colin, including myself, we all saw growth and we thrived in 2020. And if I had to look back to some of the things, the tools you gave us, the biggest thing for me was just that self-assurance, that positive self-talk, that, hey, I love what I do, and that's going to reverberate out there into the community, that my network, and it'll come back to me, that good karma that's out there. And if you want to speak on that, just some of the stuff that you unlocked for all of us that day, and from your perspective, what did you do? And how did it work? If you hypnotized the whole class of 30 people and all of a sudden we became star salesmen going over the most challenging year of everyone's career, what did you do?
Well, I think two things. Number one, Leah, when you were talking earlier, you were talking about programming and self-hypnosis. And Whether you're programming intentionally or whether you're programming by accident, you're always being programmed by your surroundings, by your environment, and how you're reacting to it, and how other people are reacting to you. And so with that framework in mind, going back to the training where we had those 30 advisors in the room, one of the things I did was to give you guys all the tools to really think about how you want to program yourself. It wasn't me programming you. It was showing you the different tools and techniques that you have available at your own disposal. That are, a lot of those are in the book, and we went over some of those within the training. We can maybe go over some of those here today, depending on what you guys want to do. But the idea was to be able to give you guys the tools and techniques, not only to recognize what's manipulating you in your environment, but how to do something about it so that you can spot how you're reacting, whether it's your friends, your family, the media, whatever it is, so you can see what's going on and then do something and alter and change and improve your behavior and your outcomes and your habits based on where you want yourself to go. A lot of it, as I said earlier, you're programming yourself intentionally, as we were discussing, or unintentionally. And really, I gave you guys the tools to program yourselves intentionally, despite what was going on in your environment. That was the primary thing that I did, I believe. Would you agree that's what I did, or was there something else that you feel I did?
Oh, 100%. But even just the explaining of it, I think, and what you did to build trust and credibility, and maybe we need to just rewind just a little bit here, is your story, your humble beginnings of how you got into hypnotism. I think the audience would want to know, like, how did you get your start? How did you get that power to be able to do what you do?
Yeah, it's some people think give it a supernatural bent, especially with doing stage shows and performing, and they see hypnotists make people do all these crazy amazing things. And then there's also like the feats of strength that you can make people do. Like I've done ones where I stand on a person who's rigid and their body, one's on their neck and one's on their feet, or a chair's on their neck and a chair's on their feet, but there's complete space underneath, and you stand up on top of them. So there's all kinds of neat things you can do on that side. But really, for me, it all started back in high school. We used to have a teacher, Mrs. Klein. She used to hypnotize the entire class for relaxation to get us ready for during drama class. And one day, Mrs. Klein was sick, and my friend Nadine, she came up to me and she said, "Colin, you should do it." And I remember thinking, well, I don't know how to do that. And she said, "Just give it a shot." And I remember sort of the rest of the class was all over listening to our conversation. And they all go like, "Yeah, Colin, yeah, do it. So I copied what Mrs. Klein did, and I hypnotized the entire class for relaxation. I later on, once I got training, I found out like people can have trouble waking up properly if you don't know what you're doing, especially how unskilled I was back then. So I wouldn't recommend doing that until like you get some training. When I got training, I understood what how to manage all that and make sure everybody was safe. But everything worked out really well. And I remember my friend Nadine afterwards, she came up to me and she said, "Colin, that was really good." And I remember, I just put my hands on my hips and I was like, maybe I should be a hypnotist. And she just looked at me and she said, "Yeah, you should." And yeah, it's crazy to think, because like Mrs. Klein and Nadine, they're like the motivation, the people who sort of got me into it and gave me the encouragement I needed. And neither of them actually saw what I do. They passed away a long time ago, but not together, but separately. But yeah, they never, those relationships, like they influence everything that I do, like the people I help, you guys listening right now. And without them, I wouldn't be, the hypnotist or the entertainer or the performer or the trainer that I am right now. Like it's really because of them.
What a defining moment. And I tell you, there's so much to what you just said there. Now I know why my back was hurting so bad after I woke up after my nice trip to the beach. But
I don't know who stood on you, but it wasn't me.
Anyway, but on the past episodes, you talked about some of the things, and Colin, you've got a book, you wrote a book, Success Through Manipulation. But one thing you taught me is when people normally hear the word manipulation, they think it's a bad, negative thing, but really it's not. The only thing you're manipulating really is yourself. So Leah, one cool thing, chapter 9, there's the law of fight or flight. And we've talked a lot about that, how you talked in another episode about fight, flight, freeze, and disassociation.
Dissociate. Yeah.
Dissociate.
Flight, flight, or freeze. Flight, flight, or freeze.
Dissociate. The fourth aspect of that is dissociate. Isn't that funny? So people just don't do anything, or they become another persona. Take on another persona in order to deal with whatever it is that they've got going on. So yeah. So I think our brains are very interesting, and unlocking our brains is just really starting to be understood. And I don't know if it ever will be fully understood. That's why we're supposed to remain a mystery. But still, we're supposed to be the most bright, shiny thing that we can be of ourselves, whether that's completely reverent or completely diabolical. So it's you gotta take your pick of which side of the fence you're going to be on, and get on that the refining yourself and being a better human being in whatever regard you're supposed to be here on whatever path. So bless Mrs. Klein and bless Nadine for helping you to get on your path. Maybe they're watching from the other dimensions, who knows, right? Cheering you on, and all the things that you do in your life. And you haven't necessarily had an easy life. I think that this is the other thing, is people might have the idea that because you're a hypnotist, you maybe have been able to hypnotize everyone around you to just be and do and have, however that might turn out. So does that work that way? Can you just manifest?
No, that's really interesting, because the people around me, because they've known me all my life, so even before I was a hypnotist, and so I don't know how it is for most people. Like when you start on a new career path, that's very different. Although I've been at this now, I think it's 23 years now I'm at it. The people before that, they still don't, consider me a hypnotist. Like they've seen me hypnotize people. I've been on TV. I got written books on it, and they just see me as a completely different person. So I unfortunately I have not been able to wave my hand, and maybe it's fortunate actually.
That's great. Thanks for being vulnerable and candid about that, because we've mentioned, you can't be a prophet in your own village lots of times. So you can have really good ideas and great, outcomes of things, and some people just uninterested. But going to this whole group, that how you program yourself, we talk a lot about mentorship on this show, and the people who you hang around with, and the group of people who you hang around with influence how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you respond. The shows that you're watching, same thing. So how important is it? How much influence do these groups or mentors have on us? Even when we're intentional about the things that we're ingesting every day. Is our mind working all the time, 24/7? Is there ever a time when it's shut off, where it's not influenced?
Well, I think that goes back to sort of the gatekeeper that we talked about earlier. So a lot of people think, well, I'm going to be, I'm going to go out in the world, and all these things are going to influence me and change how I think. The nice thing about the gatekeeper is it's sort of there to make sure that doesn't happen. So intentionally, you gotta work at bypassing the gatekeeper, so you can impress your subconscious mind the way you want to. And the challenge is your gatekeeper's not always there. So if you're sleeping, as we talked about before, like if you're impaired, or like drugs are a factor, any time that your gatekeeper is not engaged, that's when your subconscious can be impressed and new decisions can be made. So it does really depend on the scenario where you're consciously allowing things in or not allowing things in to change your programming and to influence how you want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So Colin, you talked about drugs there, and basically we've been plagued with all the different addictions in our culture, in our society. Is that something you've helped people on in the past, or something that hypnotism can actually help with?
Yeah, I have seen different clients for different kinds of addictions, for different substances, alcohol, certain drugs. And it can be a useful tool to help somebody address those scenarios and situations, especially, going back in time. Like a really common one would that everybody's sort of aware of would be quitting smoking. Like the nicotine is a common over-the-counter drug. Now you're going back to those initial points in time where that person decided to participate in that behavior, whether it's smoking or whatever other drug that it happens to be, or gambling, or, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a drug, but an addiction of some kind. And when you go back and resolve the issues as to, you know, what was on their mind during that time, what decisions they made at that time, and then move them forward with that understanding and that resolution. Like, understanding is one thing, but you also have to resolve it. Now, the resolving can be all done mentally in the hypnosis, in the hypnotic state, because you're working at impressing your subconscious with new decisions and new expressions. And so once they're brought forward, all that understanding and all that experience becomes part of the resolution and part of moving forward. Now, does that always completely get rid of an addiction? It gets rid of on the mental side. Now, physical things like an easy one like smoking, it's not an easy one to quit, but there's the physical addiction of the nicotine, which usually takes about, I've read any different studies, anywhere between 3 and 6 days to get that the physical portion under control. But then it's the mental side that we work on. And so those are the two differences. So that also depends a little bit on what drug and what the circumstance is, and how to get that substance out of your system.
Does motivation play a factor as well, Colin, when people come, if they're feeling motivated to quit? Does that help with the success, or?
It depends on where that motivation comes from. Motivation typically, I find, is an external source. So I go see a motivational speaker, I'm fired up, I'm excited. But then there's that internal inspiration where I take that motivation and I run the battery on my own power, versus the motivation is that it's like jumper cables jump starting you and getting you excited. So I look at it. You can be really motivated to quit smoking. For example, like if you have a health problem and your doctor says you got to quit smoking, because I've had clients who needed heart surgery and had to quit smoking.
Right.
And the motivation was an external, and because it was external, it didn't work because they really didn't want to quit. They have to be inspired within. They have to have the desire within to do something. Now, even if that desire is small, I can do something with it. But if there's no desire, I can't do anything.
Wow. Well, and again, from a financial standpoint too, that could be a motivating factor if it's just killing your monthly budget. I've seen some clients have smoking budgets of spending $1,200, $1,300 a month, which is same as some people's mortgage payments. It's crazy to think. Now, addictions aside, and smoking obviously being a big one you've helped with, is there any other kind of less common things you've helped people with hypnotism?
There's all like my favorite is always helping people with like fears and phobias and those kinds of things. Like obviously the chicken one, but I've done let me think. There like fear of flying is a really good one, because that actually changes the outcome of somebody's life, because they can travel and save time and do those kinds of things. And then the other side to it, like that, the second part to that story of starting it down the hypnosis path with Mrs. Klein and Dean, like later on as I was performing and doing shows, people always kept on coming up to me and asking, how do I hypnotize somebody to buy my stuff? And I always sort of laughed at that question, because it was, you just because you see me do some crazy stuff on stage, it doesn't really work that way in real life. I mean, there's some subliminal things, but I realized what these people are asking, it's not that, how do I hypnotize somebody to buy stuff? It's how do I connect with this person in front of me so that person genuinely likes me, I genuinely like them. All my preconceptions and biases are out of the way. All their preconceptions and biases are out of the way. And really, we can just meet in the middle and connect. And that's sort of what I've really spent the last 10 years applying my hypnosis to, is how to get those preconceptions and biases out of each other's ways so we can actually connect and communicate on a much more, emotionally intelligent, genuine level. And I think that's where the hypnosis can be really, really powerful, because when we walk in with preconceptions and bias, we go to right now we're doing the Zoom networking, but if we show up and we will show up again in other networking events, most people are always worried about what the other person's thinking. Nobody's ever in their own head thinking about how do I make this other person feel comfortable, safe, and trusted so that we can connect. And I think that's what we did with your group as well, Greg. We spent time getting people to understand first themselves and where they're coming from. And then from that own self-awareness and self-understanding, they could come to a relationship or come to a conversation and actually communicate effectively so that person likes them, you like them, you like each other, and then the real friendship develops. I mean, we've all got these like really charismatic friends or people that we know that we just, oh, I want to be in the room with this person. I want to be in the room with this person. And, for the rest of us, like 99, I wasn't like that in the beginning. I was actually very, I wouldn't say antisocial, but I had, I guess, anxiety about being in public and talking to people. Interestingly enough, because I do the opposite of what I'm up on stage and communicating, connecting with people. But that understanding where that bias was and where those preconceptions and what was making me nervous and anxious and resolving all those things allowed me to get out of my own way and connect with other people. And that's really, I think, what we're the primary benefit of hypnosis is getting all that stuff out of your head so you can just be the best person that you are.
And I love that you frame that contextually there, Colin. One lady that was at that training, you'll remember exactly who she is, because we got to tell a story. And it was all to do with our why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we love what we do? And why do you continue to do what you do? And remember that story. I'm going to say her name because I'm just so proud of her and what she's done in her business and how she's just taken things to the next level. And her name's Lizelle. I actually sent her a neat email this morning just sharing some of her success with her because she didn't even realize how well she was doing. So if you remember the story very specifically, she talked about the first death check she had to deliver after she had a client pass away that literally was still within the underwriting process. And she was able to deliver a check to a single mother for $250,000, I believe, or maybe more. But that was a defining moment for her. And just how you let her share that story in front of everybody, I think just gave her that confidence, like, wow, like I did that. I made a difference in somebody's life. And I was able to deliver that check to a family when they needed it the most. Do you remember that story?
I do. So I think I remember because she was sort of in the middle because there were like three tables with eight or nine people on each table. And it sort of like ended up being a box. And she was sort of in the middle of that. And I remember her talking and starting the story. And I'm at the front of the room. And from my perspective, I don't think I told you this, but everybody sort of turned. And so she was the center of this box. And she was just telling that story. And I was watching everybody as she was explaining this, and everybody almost collectively, nobody cried, but you could feel the emotion in that room. You could feel the connection. And I think that, number one, it was, that touchstone for her to realize, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is, it's not about, writing policies. It's about making sure that the person who needs it when they need it, is going to be able to, I guess, in this case, collect or benefit from it. And everybody in that room, as I watched everybody, although the story was different for everybody a little bit here and there, it all reinforced that, yeah, this is why I'm here. This is the people portion of all the numbers. This is how we're helping people. This is why we're here. And it was just incredible to watch. And I think that emotion not only, was a touchstone for her, but it became a touchstone for everybody. And, I'm not a financial planner, but if I were to do financial planning tomorrow, I wouldn't be using, because I don't have my own stories, because I've never had to deliver this check, but I would use her story. And I would just say, when I was doing a training, she sat down and talked about how she gave this check to a mother. And I can feel the emotion now. And, it's something that happened about a year, November 2019. I remember we did the training. And so it's that I guess for lack of a better description, the manipulation of that emotional connection, but in a good way, not not the manipulation of crazy media stuff or all other kinds of things. This was that manipulation in a positive way to really understand how she was helping people.
Yeah, it
Makes
was
me
an
feel
amazing
like
story.
makes me feel like it's reverence. It's having reverence for a moment where you actually look at the moment and you revel in it. You really get in touch with the feeling and the authentic, good parts of that, and that's that reverence, and that blossoms into more genuine affection for whatever it is that you're doing. And
I think it's all,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's also the inspiration, like we talked about the motivation external, the internal inspiration, like that story.
Yeah.
Although it was her story, inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
And it inspired everybody else in that room to take their own energy and work at it and use it to their own business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really cool. So you're teaching people really to be authentic.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I think we're all authentic to our own abilities, but it's
Maybe openly.
getting rid of the masks and the airs that we have and we put forward, and getting those out of the way so we can just be ourselves. We layer. We have a tendency to layer, or at least the people who I help have a tendency to layer fakeness on top of authenticity. And I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just stuff that we've learned in school. We have different, hats that we wear in work and home life and all those different things. And instead of trying to play to all those different hats, take the hat off and just be the person under the hat.
Lee, you heard it. Get rid of the masks.
You heard it.
You heard it. Not wearing my mask, Colin. Anyway.
Enough about that. Moving along.
Anyway, yeah. We'd all like to get rid of that mask, but figuratively, can you just quell some of the myths about the little hourglass? You're getting really sleepy.
Yeah, those are pretty standard. Like I think hypnotists used to do those back in like the 1800s and stuff. Really, what they're doing is they're giving you an object to focus upon, to distract you a little bit, to get your gatekeeper out of the way. But really, you don't need any of that. You just need to close your eyes and just follow the suggestions. It's interesting. Like what movie was it? I think it was like the Butterfly Effect. I remember the hypnotist had hypnotized what's his name, Ashton Kutcher. I can't remember the character's name, but he was trying to wake him up. He's like, okay, on the count of 10, you're going to be wide awake. And in the meantime, he's freaking out in the chair, and he's like, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, just say, wake up, dude. Like, yeah, you don't need all these. All that stuff is like subterfuge and distraction and misnomers. But like modern hypnotists are, we're really good at just doing it very quickly with the sound of our voice and saying and structuring the words so that you can follow that without having to use all the props. Now, at the same time, sometimes props can be pretty effective if you're doing it on a stage show or something else like that. It really depends on what your outcome is as the hypnotist and what you want to portray.
Right. Brilliant. And so do you want to share a couple of other things that you've done in your training? Like, so going back to the training that you did, you said we were going to talk about a few tips, things that you focused in on. What would be another thing that would be important here?
Well, let's see. I think so. We talked about like how I got into it. We went to sort of what we do during the training. I think one of the things we can touch on a little bit more, like I actually only do hypnosis in the actual training. What did we do it for? Maybe 10 minutes, Greg, I think it was. Yep. In the 4 hours that we were there together. And that was specifically to give a specific tool and technique to reinforce that you can come back to this place of power and strength. And from there, the next things that we actually did were how to connect with somebody. So the idea is to go up to a complete stranger when you're, wherever it is, you're at this networking event, and to, everybody walks up, and we have this expectation when we're at this networking event that we're going to talk about work immediately. We're going to go into the small talk of, the sports game, Super Bowl was yesterday, water cooler talk, all that small talk. And when you're in a scenario where you want to meet a bunch of people at a networking event, 10, 15, 20 people, if everybody's talking about the exact same things, the idea is to break that pattern, to break that gatekeeper. So the gatekeeper would be your small talk, your weather talk, your sports talk, all that kind of stuff that keeps the person from being connected and impressed, keeps their subconscious from being impressed upon. And so to bypass that, the best thing to do is to actually talk about something else completely. And so we had talked about starting the conversation. Did we do we did the �荷𝙯𝙩𝙯 game, I think, right? Is that the one we did, Greg? Yeah. So for example, if I just met Greg, Greg, nice to meet you, handshake over the internet. And so perfect timing as you're drinking the water. And so we've met, and I go, out of curiosity, we're at this networking event. Greg, out of curiosity, what kind of work do you do? The reason I ask is I was actually reading this psychology test the other day, and it's called �荷𝙯𝙯𝙯. So I'm really curious, if you had to choose, would you want to be an astronaut, an accountant, or an actor? Which would you choose?
And I think I said astronaut.
Mm-hmm. Leah, what about you? What would you choose?
Astronaut.
Astronaut. Okay, so astronauts,
Yeah.
they're calculated risk takers. They're good at working on their own, but they're also great at working on groups because they're doing these risky things and they're working together in teams. Now, does that describe your personality a little bit? I think Greg, it does. Leah, how about you? Greg, I remember now that we're doing it, it was a year and a half ago.
So I'll say my second choice would be actor.
Your second choice would be actor. So an actor would be someone who's like the life of the party, wants to be the center of attention. Does that describe you?
So I'm like a chameleon. I think I'm like, I can do that. I can be that and be authentic and genuine, but I also have other things that I enjoy. So accounting, I would say, would be my least favorite.
So
what does it mean?
Accountants like to follow the rules and play by the book.
I have a lot of friends who are accountants. Thank you, all of my accountant friends.
And now the fourth option is actually not to pick any of those. And say I don't choose any of them, and those are out of the box thinkers. Yeah. And now the idea is normally, so what I did with Greg when we did this example is astronaut, I explained it, and I started guiding the conversation in other directions. So instead of talking about work, which everybody else is doing at this networking event, I've bypassed the gatekeeper and I've done something interesting. Now, it did describe Greg fairly well. For you, Leah, you felt like you were more of a chameleon. That's okay. It doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is the fact that we no longer are talking about water cooler talk. We're actually talking about each other's personalities, something interesting. And then as the conversation progresses, I know we're both here to meet other people, but I'd love to connect again. Give me your number. Just text me right now, and then I'd get you to text me and say, you know what, Leah or Greg, put in astronaut Greg, Leah put in accounting Leah, or whatever you decided to do. And now all of a sudden in this text message, not only have you gotten their contact information effectively, but they're going to remember that conversation immediately, whereas everybody else doesn't remember that conversation. Everybody else was talking about sports and weather and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So cool, because what I find at networking things is that people corner me and then I can't get away. It's just like, I gotta go. I'm going. This is me going. No, I'm kidding. But that's part of it. So it's like not knowing how to end things, because social niceties and things like that, it's much more difficult to do when you're in person at these. So I love that strategy. It's great.
Well, and I said that strategy right at the end. You know what? We're at a networking event. I know you want to meet other people and I want to meet other people too. Let's exchange contact information because it's very safe. It's very easy.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
at some networking events, you meet people you don't want the contact information for. And so I always just go, you know what, we're here to meet other people. It's great to meet you, or a pleasure to meet you. Shake the hand and don't exchange information. The one nice thing, I think I said this, Greg, when we did the training as well, is when you're networking and you're doing, you know, this structure, you can meet a lot of people very quickly, and you can cherry pick who you want to talk to and don't want to talk to. And I mean, in general, it's not as much of a problem for guys, but for women, a lot of times, they meet a lot of people that they don't want to exchange, like they don't want to give their number to, and vice versa, because those people came off as creepy. It's not that necessarily that they weren't nice, but they failed to establish that comfort, safety, and trust that something like we just did with that AAA's game. You know, that's a tool or a technique to help you establish that comfort, safety, and trust, and not, you know, have something fun and enjoyable and thought-provoking versus just the regular stuff.
Love that you brought that up. And you just, the best thing in marketing is that recall factor, plus also the timing it takes to do something different, right? Everyone talks about elevator pitch, elevator pitch, elevator pitch. What you just did is a whole different spin on being different and not being that guy that's handing out business cards like it's candy. And I just want to share one story on that. One of the craziest networking events, it was a Chamber of Commerce event I was at, and I was actually standing beside one of my clients, and she was to my left. And she was introducing me to one of her best friends and said, hey, you should maybe talk to my guy. He can help you out with some investments. And he's my guy. Just trust him. And one of these other financial advisors in town came out. He just literally gave me the cold shoulder, kind of pushed me out of the way and said, hi, I'm so-and-so, and here's my card. Give me a call. I'll be your investment guy. And my client literally picked his card, looks at it, flicked it back at him, said, nope, this is my financial wizard right here. Have a nice day. So don't be that guy.
You know, that's exactly right. Like, and but there are so many people out there like that, and they're losing. It's not that they're not good. It's just that they don't know how to, like, if you want somebody to turn over your money to them so that you can help them obviously make more money and plan their retirement, plan their future, you got to trust them.
Right. We're not that disconnected. Our money and our hearts are not that far apart. So this whole, whatever it is, of not connecting at the heart sort of level, I think that people are getting less cerebral and more about making connections that are meaningful, because they're lifetime connections. When you're talking about people's money, that is a lifetime connection. It's legacy. You know, you want to be looking at these things from 7 generations, not 15 minutes of a relationship. So that's, you know, that changes how you approach things, and and how you manage, or who you choose to have in your wheelhouse. For people who struggle with this, is there with the proper ways to introduce each other, or to introduce themselves, like you were describing that fellow Greg, that to me seems like somebody who actually has not got good confidence. That it's the opposite. You act one way when you're really underconfident. And so do your skills actually help? Can you hypnotize somebody to relax and be less anxious in those social situations, Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's more of a one-on-one session regarding, looking at those confidence issues, because all of that stems back from, what are the reasons, what's the cause that those things are happening. And so in a therapy setting, we'll go back to those initial points, those decisions, again, similar to what we did with the fears and phobias around chickens, resolving the challenges and those issues that those decisions were made when they were younger, bringing them back forward with that proper information. At the same time, like Greg, when I did your group of financial planners, we're bringing them back to that happy place, or that place of power for them, depending on where it was in their mind that they went. Those things create immediate self-confidence, but not overconfidence. It gives you that, oh, I'm in my safe place. When I'm safe, everybody else is safe, and that's how I can connect and communicate with somebody.
There's a second part to that I want to share with the audience, is that while I was in that state of peace and sleep and calm and just feeling recharged. And Leah, to your point, did I feel less anxious? Heck yeah, because I'm in my happy place. I'm feeling the sunshine. I'm literally hearing the waves crash against the shore. Colin, I want you to share the one very second important piece is you got us all to write a letter to ourselves.
Yeah.
And not a physical letter, but you can actually, I could actually visualize myself writing the letter in my hypnotic state, in my trance. And then you said to put it in my back pocket so that when I was able to really need it, I could pull it out of my back pocket. I can still remember is it says to myself that I'm authentic, I'm genuine, I love what I do. And this is why you'd want to interact with me. And I think that was very, very powerful, that positive self-talk. If you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, what I did there was I created an anchor. And so very similar to a ship, when you lay anchor, it keeps you in the place that you want to be, or it brings you back to the place that you want to be on a subconscious level. And so by bringing it to that, that place that you were happy, and then creating that letter, it was a double anchor so that one, you're in that place, two, you have exactly the confidence and the mindset that you need. And then because you're in those places, then you can move forward exactly where you want to go from the strength of that position versus being somewhere else where, you don't have that letter, you don't know where you're at, you don't know what's going on, the environment's all affecting you. It's those touchstones that give you the tools that you can bypass all the environment and just be exactly who you want to be.
Love that, because all through 2020 would have been so incredibly important for people who've never had any life challenges or whatever. If they've never learned any skills to be anchored, last year would have been a mind blower. And sometimes when you're put under an enormous amount of stress, if you don't have any anchors in your life or for yourself or in your mentors or your family, then it can be very difficult to come out of those things successfully. You make lots of poor decisions that can cost you, not just in the short term, but really in the long term, that you can't back up out of some of those things. So the value of this, I think, is you're just starting to realize it now in your group, but that over the span of a lifetime for some of these 33 people, was it 33 that were in your group? What was the number?
30 in the group, yeah. And there's going to be actually 50 in the next group because we're bringing Colin back.
Yeah, awesome. Yes. So when you think about that, extrapolating out to the families that they live in and the communities that they're operating in and the businesses that they're running or the way that they manage their health and well-being and how they walk through the world, that is like an exponential, thousands and thousands and thousands of points of effect on other people. So again, I just want to say, I just think it's incredibly important. And very cool, your teacher and your friend to teach you this.
Hold on, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm
supposed to be the trifecta. Am I supposed to be the trifecta? Where's my Pokemon?
There's the other one, the workbook. You got all my notes there, Leah, I left for you.
Exactly, the trifecta. So as we take the show out, we usually share a little song. So I am going to pitch This Is So Funny to Greg. He's going to read some lyrics to a tune before we wrap.
Yeah, this is awesome. So on my drive into work today to the office, everyone's heard this song before. It's by Jimmy Cliff. I can see clearly now. Okay, I don't see any more chickens in my future or my past. I'm going to read you the lyrics now because it's all about rainbows and butterflies. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Right. Bring it on.
Okay, I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Oh yes, I can make it now. The pain is gone. All the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Look all around. There's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead. There's nothing but blue skies. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone, and I can see all obstacles in my way. Here's that rainbow I've been praying for. And he goes on, that repetitive thing. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. So Leah, it is a bright, bright, sunshiny day. There was rainbows in the -30, whatever it is here, degrees Celsius in Edmonton, Alberta. Did you want
I
to
saw
share
those.
that before we close out the show? You saw a rainbow today.
Yeah, this morning at like 9:02. It was the hugest sundog in the world and the most beautiful sunrise that I've seen, I think, in the entirety of my life. It was absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous. We're so lucky to live in this sub-freezing Arctic weather. How can people get a hold of you, Colin?
You know what? The best way is just go on colinchristopher.com and send me an email or give me a call.
Wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest. Thank you so much for your time today and for your wisdom, your insight, intelligence, and inspiration to help people to live a better life. As usual, Greg, wonderful to see you. And again, invite everybody to love yourselves, love each other, mind your minds. That's all for us. Take care. Peace.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Colin.
Guys.
Thank you.